Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you never saw the knife coming until it was already buried in your back? Have you ever stood in a courtroom and realized that the person trying to destroy you is the same person who once held your hand through every childhood storm? Let me tell you about the day my sister sued me for my inheritance and how one single document request from a lawyer changed absolutely everything I thought I knew about my family, my father, and the sister I would have died for. This is my story, and I need to share it. Because maybe, just maybe, someone out there needs to hear this before they make the same mistakes I did. My name is Sarah, and 6 months ago, I was standing in a courtroom watching my older sister Jennifer try to take everything our father left me. But this story doesn't start there. It starts 32 years ago when I was born, the second daughter to parents who never quite planned on having another child. Jennifer was 5 years older than me, and from my earliest memories, she was everything I wanted to be. She was confident where I was shy, bold where I was cautious, and beautiful in a way that made people stop and stare. I worshipped her. I followed her around like a shadow, mimicking her laugh, trying to copy the way she styled her hair, begging her to let me hang out with her and her friends even though I knew I was just the annoying little sister. Growing up, our house was filled with the kind of chaos that comes with two daughters who are complete opposites. Jennifer was the golden child, the one who brought home perfect report cards and dated the quarterback, and got accepted to every college she applied to. I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the daughter who spent Friday nights reading in my room instead of sneaking out to parties. Mom used to joke that we were like sunshine and moonlight, both necessary, both beautiful, but existing in completely different worlds. Dad never played favorites, though. At least that's what I believed for the longest time. He had this way of making each of us feel special in our own unique way. With Jennifer, he attended every cheerleading competition, every debate tournament, every moment of glory. With me, he sat through countless hours of helping me with science fair projects, teaching me to change a tire, showing me how to balance a checkbook, all those quiet moments that didn't come with trophies or applause, but meant everything to me. Jennifer left for college when I was 13, and I remember crying for days. She went to Stanford because of course she did, studying business and finance, making connections, building the kind of life that looked perfect from the outside. She would come home for holidays, and I would sit at her feet listening to stories about her internships at prestigious firms, her networking events, her plans to conquer the corporate world. I was so proud of her. So incredibly proud. I went to state college, studied teaching, became a high school English teacher, which Jennifer always said was admirable in that tone that made it clear she thought I was wasting my potential. But I loved my job. I loved seeing students' faces light up when they finally understood Shakespeare, loved being the teacher that kids felt safe talking to, loved making a difference in small, quiet ways that would never make headlines but mattered deeply to me. Dad was a self-made man, the kind who started with nothing and built something substantial through decades of hard work and smart investments. He owned a successful construction company, had real estate properties scattered across 3 states, and had invested wisely in stocks and bonds over the years. He wasn't a millionaire, but he was comfortable, and he always told us that everything he built was for his daughters, for our future, for our security. Mom passed away when I was 23 from breast cancer, and it nearly destroyed all of us. Jennifer flew in for the funeral, stayed for a week, and then went back to her life in New York, where she was climbing the corporate ladder at a major investment firm. Dad retreated into his work, and I moved back home for a year to take care of him, to make sure he ate actual meals and didn't just drink coffee for dinner, to sit with him on the nights when the grief was so heavy that he couldn't breathe. That year living with Dad after Mom died changed our relationship. We became not just father and daughter, but real friends. We would stay up late talking about everything and nothing, about his regrets and dreams, about Mom and how much we missed her laugh, about my struggles with teaching and his challenges with running a business as he got older. Jennifer would call once a week, these brief check-ins where she would ask how Dad was doing in that distracted way that made it clear she was multitasking, probably answering emails while talking to us. I never resented her for it. She had her life, her career, her own path. I understood, or at least I thought I did. When I was 28, I met Marcus at a teacher's conference. He taught history at a school across town, and we bonded over our shared love of getting teenagers to care about things that happened before they were born. We dated for 2 years before getting engaged, and Dad loved him. He would joke that he finally had a son, someone to watch football with, someone who actually understood his terrible dad jokes. Jennifer came to the engagement party and gave a toast about how she always knew I would find someone who matched my simple, sweet nature, which everyone thought was touching, but felt like a backhanded compliment wrapped in silk. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table, and I pushed the feeling away. Jennifer was my sister. She loved me. She was just being Jennifer. We were planning a fall wedding when Dad got sick. It started with him feeling tired all the time, which we attributed to age and stress. He was 65, talking about retirement, making plans to travel and finally take it easy. Then came the persistent cough that wouldn't go away, the weight loss he couldn't explain, the night sweats that left him drenched and exhausted. I begged him to see a doctor. He kept putting it off, saying it was just a cold, just the weather changing, just getting older. Finally, I made an appointment and drove him there myself, sitting in that sterile waiting room with my stomach in knots, knowing deep down that something was terribly wrong. Lung cancer. Stage 4. The doctor's words hit me like a physical blow, and I watched my father's face crumble in a way I had never seen before. He had never smoked a day in his life, exercised regularly, ate healthy, did everything right, and somehow cancer had found him anyway. They gave him 6 months to a year with aggressive treatment, maybe longer if we were lucky. I called Jennifer from the hospital parking lot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. She was in a meeting. She said she would call me back. She didn't call back for 6 hours, and when she did, her voice was steady and controlled, asking practical questions about treatment options and prognosis and whether Dad had his affairs in order. No tears, no emotion. Just Jennifer being Jennifer, approaching our father's death sentence like a business problem to be managed and solved. The next 8 months were the hardest of my life. I took a leave of absence from teaching to care for Dad full-time. Marcus and I postponed the wedding, and he was incredibly understanding, showing up every evening after work to help with whatever needed doing, never complaining, never making me feel guilty for putting our life on hold. We turned the downstairs guest room into a makeshift hospital room, filling it with medical equipment and pill organizers and the smell of sickness that no amount of air freshener could quite mask. Dad fought hard. He went through chemotherapy that made him so sick he could barely lift his head, radiation that burned his skin and exhausted him to the bone, clinical trials that offered hope but delivered only more suffering. Jennifer visited 3 times during those 8 months. 3 times. Each visit lasted approximately 48 hours before she had to get back to New York for some urgent work crisis that couldn't possibly wait. She would sit with Dad for an hour or two, making small talk about her job and her apartment and her life, carefully avoiding any real conversation about what was happening, about the fact that our father was dying. Then she would find me in the kitchen and ask pointed questions about Dad's finances, about whether his will was updated, about his business and properties and investment portfolio. I thought she was just being practical, making sure everything was in order. I thought she was trying to help in the only way she knew how. I was so incredibly naive. Dad died on a Tuesday morning in March, with me holding one hand and Marcus holding the other. He went peacefully, which is what everyone says, because what else can you say about death? Jennifer was on a business trip in Tokyo. She had known Dad was declining rapidly, but she had insisted this trip couldn't be rescheduled, that she would be back in a few days, that surely Dad would hold on until then. He didn't. He couldn't. I called her and told her Dad was gone, and she was silent for so long I thought the connection had dropped. Then she said, "I'll catch the next flight out," in a voice so empty it made my chest ache. She arrived the day before the funeral, red-eyed and hollow, and I hugged her in the airport and we cried together, and for a moment, just a moment, we were sisters again, united in our grief and loss. The funeral was beautiful in the way that funerals can be, full of people sharing stories about Dad's kindness and generosity and terrible sense of humor. Jennifer gave a eulogy that made everyone cry, talking about how much she loved him, how much she had learned from him, how she would carry his lessons with her always. I couldn't speak. I tried, but when I stood up at the podium, the words died in my throat, and I just stood there crying until Marcus gently guided me back to my seat. After the service, after the reception, after everyone left, and it was just Jennifer and me and Marcus in Dad's house surrounded by casserole dishes and sympathy cards, Jennifer asked when we were meeting with the lawyer to go over the will. I hadn't even thought about it. I was drowning in grief, barely able to function, just trying to get through each day without falling apart. But Jennifer had clearly been thinking about it a lot. She had the lawyer's card ready, suggested we make an appointment for the following week, said it was important to handle these matters promptly. I agreed because I didn't have the energy to disagree, because I trusted her, because I never imagined that my sister was already planning how to take everything from me. The will reading happened in a lawyer's office that smelled like old books and furniture polish. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, was an older gentleman who had known our family for years. He offered his condolences, asked us how we were holding up with the kind of gentle concern that made my eyes sting with fresh tears. Jennifer sat perfectly composed in her designer suit, her face carefully neutral. I was in jeans and one of Dad's old sweaters because I couldn't bear to take it off, because it still smelled like him, like Old Spice and coffee and home. Mr. Harrison opened the will and began reading in that formal, legal language that makes everything sound both important and completely incomprehensible. There were specific bequests, small amounts to charities Dad had supported, his truck to his best friend Tom, Mom's jewelry split between Jennifer and me. Then came the big stuff, the business, the properties, the investment accounts, the life insurance policy. I wasn't really paying attention because I didn't care about money. I cared about the fact that my father was gone and no amount of inheritance could fill that hole. But then I heard Mr. Harrison say my name, and I looked up, and Jennifer's face had gone completely white. Dad left everything to me. Not split equally between his daughters, not divided 50-50, everything. The entire estate, minus the specific bequests, came to me. The construction company with its contracts and equipment and employees, the rental properties generating income each month, the investment portfolio Dad had carefully built over decades, the house we grew up in, full of memories and ghosts. All of it. Mine. Mr. Harrison explained that there was a letter from Dad, sealed and addressed to both of us, that would explain his reasoning. He handed it to me with a sympathetic look that suggested he knew exactly what bomb was about to explode. My hands were shaking as I opened it, and Jennifer was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read, something between shock and fury and betrayal. The letter was in Dad's handwriting, that familiar scrawl I knew so well from birthday cards and notes left on the kitchen counter. "My dearest daughters," it began, and my eyes immediately filled with tears. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope you know how much I loved you both. Every single day of my life, you two were my greatest joy and my proudest accomplishment. Jennifer, you are brilliant and driven and capable of achieving anything you set your mind to. You have built an incredible career and life, and I am so proud of the woman you have become. Sarah, you are kind and compassionate, and you give so much of yourself to others. You stayed with me through the hardest time of my life, and I will never forget the sacrifice you made to care for me when I was sick." The letter went on to explain that Dad had left the bulk of his estate to me because Jennifer was already financially successful and secure, earning a six-figure salary and living comfortably, while I was a teacher making a modest income. He wanted to make sure I would be taken care of, that I would have security, that I wouldn't struggle financially the way he had struggled in his younger years. He said it wasn't about loving one daughter more than the other. It was about need and fairness and making sure both his daughters would be okay. He also wrote something that made my blood run cold. "I know this decision may cause conflict, and I'm sorry for that, but I trust my daughters to remember that family is more important than money, that the bond you share is worth more than any inheritance. Take care of each other. Love each other. Don't let my death be the thing that tears you apart." I looked up from the letter to find Jennifer staring at me with an expression of pure hatred. It lasted only a second before she masked it, but I saw it, clear as day, and something in my chest cracked. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, and said in a voice like ice, "This is unacceptable. Dad wasn't in his right mind when he wrote this will. He was sick, probably on medication that affected his judgment. This will is going to be contested." Mr. Harrison started to explain that the will had been written 2 years before Dad got sick, that Dad had been of completely sound mind, that the will was ironclad and wouldn't be easy to contest. But Jennifer wasn't listening. She grabbed her purse and walked out of the office without another word, without looking at me, without acknowledging that I existed. I sat there stunned, clutching the letter, trying to process what had just happened. Marcus put his arm around me and said quietly, "She's just in shock. She'll come around." She didn't come around. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing from Jennifer. I called her cell phone dozens of times, leaving voicemails begging her to talk to me, explaining that I never asked for this, that we could work something out, that I would be happy to share everything with her because she was my sister, and money didn't matter as much as family. She never called back. Then I got served with legal papers. Jennifer was suing me for her share of the inheritance, claiming undue influence, claiming Dad had been manipulated, claiming the will was invalid. She was demanding half of everything, plus damages, plus legal fees. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I couldn't breathe. My own sister, the person I had looked up to my entire life, was taking me to court, was calling me a manipulator. was suggesting I had somehow brainwashed our dying father into leaving me his estate. It was so absurd, so painful, so completely devastating that I actually laughed when I first read the lawsuit. Then I cried for 3 hours straight while Marcus held me and whispered that everything would be okay, even though we both knew nothing would ever be okay again. I hired a lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen, who came highly recommended and had a reputation for being tough as nails. She read through Jennifer's lawsuit and immediately told me it was weak, that Jennifer didn't have a case, that the will would stand up in court. But she also warned me that these things get ugly, that family lawsuits are the worst kind because they're personal, because they destroy relationships, because even when you win, you lose. I told her I didn't care about winning. I cared about understanding why my sister hated me so much. Patricia looked at me with something like pity and said, "Honey, this isn't about hate. This is about greed. And greed makes people do terrible things." The months leading up to the trial were a nightmare. Jennifer's lawyers sent interrogatories, demanded documents, deposed everyone who had known Dad, trying to find any scrap of evidence that I had manipulated him or coerced him or influenced him improperly. They talked to Dad's doctors, his friends, his business associates, his neighbors. Everyone said the same thing. Dad had been of sound mind. He had loved both his daughters. He had made his choice freely and deliberately. But Jennifer's lawyers kept pushing, kept digging, kept trying to paint me as some kind of scheming villain who had taken advantage of a sick old man. The worst part was running into people who had heard about the lawsuit. People would avoid eye contact, whisper when I walked by, treat me like I was some kind of pariah. Some of Dad's friends actually believed Jennifer's version of events, believed that I had somehow manipulated their old friend. It hurt worse than I can possibly explain. I had given up a year of my life to care for Dad, had put my career and my relationship and my entire life on hold, and now I was being accused of doing it for money, for inheritance, for greed. Have you ever been accused of something so fundamentally untrue that you don't even know how to defend yourself? Have you ever had someone you love twist the truth so completely that reality itself seems to become flexible? Marcus wanted me to settle, to just give Jennifer half of everything and make the lawsuit go away. He said it wasn't worth the stress, the pain, the damage to my health and our relationship. We fought about it constantly. I couldn't explain to him why I couldn't just surrender, why I needed to stand up for Dad's wishes, why letting Jennifer bully me into submission felt like betraying our father's memory. It wasn't about the money. It had never been about the money. It was about the principle, about honoring Dad's choices, about refusing to be steamrolled by my sister's greed and entitlement. Jennifer and I didn't speak for those 6 months before the trial. We communicated only through lawyers, these cold, formal letters that bore no resemblance to the relationship we once had. I would find myself thinking about childhood memories, about the time Jennifer stayed up all night helping me with a science project, about how she taught me to ride a bike and cheered when I finally got it, about the way she used to braid my hair and tell me I was beautiful even though I felt like an ugly duckling. I mourned my sister like she had died, because in a way, she had. The Jennifer I knew and loved was gone, replaced by this cold stranger who wanted to destroy me. The trial started on a Monday in September, almost exactly 6 months after Dad's funeral. Walking into that courtroom was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Jennifer was already there with her legal team, 3 lawyers in expensive suits who looked like they ate people like me for breakfast. She was wearing a black dress and pearls, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like she was attending a business meeting, not trying to destroy her own sister. When our eyes met, she looked right through me like I was invisible, like I was nothing, like we had never been family at all. My lawyer, Patricia, had prepared me for what was coming, but nothing could really prepare you for hearing your own sister testify that you're a manipulative, greedy person who took advantage of your dying father. Jennifer took the stand and told a story I barely recognized, painting herself as the devoted daughter who was too busy with her important career to spend much time with Dad, while I was portrayed as calculating and scheming, deliberately isolating Dad from Jennifer so I could control his decisions. She cried real tears talking about how much she missed Dad, how she regretted not being there more, how she believed he would have wanted his daughters to share his legacy equally if he had been thinking clearly. It was a masterful performance, and I could see some of the jurors softening toward her. She was so polished, so articulate, so convincing. I felt sick listening to her, watching her twist the truth into something unrecognizable. When Patricia cross-examined her, Jennifer remained calm and composed, answering every question with practiced ease. She admitted she had only visited Dad 3 times during his illness, but explained it was because of her demanding job, because she had thought he would pull through, because she had been in denial about how sick he really was. She made it sound reasonable, understandable, almost admirable in its honesty. Then it was my turn to testify. I was terrified, shaking so badly I could barely walk to the stand. Patricia had told me to just tell the truth, to speak from the heart, to let the jury see who I really was. So I did. I talked about Dad, about taking care of him, about the conversations we had, about how he had told me explicitly why he was structuring his will the way he did. I explained that I had never asked for any of it, had never expected it, had been shocked at the will reading just like Jennifer. I talked about loving my sister, about missing her, about wishing we could go back to being family instead of enemies in a courtroom. Jennifer's lawyers came at me hard during cross-examination. They asked why I had moved back home after Mom died, suggesting I had been positioning myself as the favorite daughter. They asked about every conversation I had with Dad about his will, trying to twist my words into admissions of manipulation. They asked why I hadn't immediately offered to split the inheritance with Jennifer if I really didn't care about the money. I tried to answer honestly, tried to explain that I was honoring Dad's wishes, but they made everything sound sinister and calculated. The trial went on for 2 weeks, with expert witnesses and character witnesses and financial experts all weighing in. Dad's doctor testified that Dad had been completely lucid and competent when he wrote his will. Dad's lawyer testified that Dad had been very clear about his intentions and had specifically asked him to make sure the will was structured to be difficult to contest. My students, my friends, Marcus's family, all testified about my character, about the kind of person I was. But Jennifer had her witnesses too, colleagues who testified about her stellar reputation, friends who said she was devastated by our father's death, financial experts who argued that the unequal distribution of assets was unusual and suggested undue influence. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was day 9 of the trial, and Patricia told me that morning that she was going to ask for a specific document, something she had discovered during discovery but hadn't mentioned to anyone. She wouldn't tell me what it was, just said to trust her. I was exhausted from the trial, worn down from the constant stress and the nightmare of watching my sister try to destroy me. I sat in the courtroom feeling numb, barely paying attention as Patricia stood up and addressed the judge. "Your Honor," Patricia said in her clear, confident voice, "I would like to request that the plaintiff provide a specific document that I believe is crucial to this case. I'm asking for Jennifer's phone records from the 6 months prior to our father's death, specifically text messages and emails between Jennifer and her financial advisor." I saw Jennifer's face go pale, actually pale. All the color drained out of her face, and she leaned over to whisper urgently to her lead attorney, who looked suddenly very uncomfortable. The judge asked what relevance these communications had to the case, and Patricia explained that she had reason to believe these communications would show Jennifer's true motivations and state of mind regarding the inheritance. Jennifer's attorney objected strenuously, claiming attorney-client privilege and privacy concerns, but the judge ruled that if these communications related to the inheritance and Jennifer's claim of undue influence, they were relevant and discoverable. The trial was recessed for 2 days while Jennifer's lawyers tried to fight the document request, but ultimately they had to comply. When we reconvened, Patricia had a stack of printed emails and text messages, and the look on her face told me she had found something explosive. She called Jennifer back to the stand, and I watched my sister walk up there looking like she might throw up. Patricia started reading from the documents, and with each word my heart broke a little more. The communication started from 8 months before Dad died, right after his diagnosis. Jennifer had emailed her financial advisor asking about inheritance laws, about how estates were typically divided, about what would happen if a will was challenged. She had texted him updates about Dad's declining health, but not with sadness or grief, with cold calculations about timeline and probabilities. There was an email where she discussed strategies for contesting a will if it didn't go her way. Text messages where she complained about me spending so much time with Dad, calling me Dad's little nursemaid and saying I was probably poisoning him against me. But the worst one, the one that made me actually gasp out loud in the courtroom, was an email Jennifer had sent to her financial advisor 3 weeks before Dad died. In it, she wrote, "I know the will probably leaves everything to Sarah since she's been playing the devoted daughter routine. As soon as Dad dies, I'm going to contest it. The old man is barely conscious anymore anyway. Probably doesn't even remember writing the will. I'll claim manipulation and undue influence. Sarah's too weak to fight me in court. I'll get at least half, probably more once I make her look like the gold digger she is. This is my inheritance too, and I'm not letting my loser sister steal what's mine." The courtroom was completely silent except for the sound of my sobbing. I couldn't help it. Reading those words, Hearing my sister's true feelings about me, about Dad, about everything, was more painful than anything I had experienced, even worse than watching Dad die. Marcus had his arm around me, and I was crying into his shoulder while Patricia calmly asked Jennifer to explain these communications. Jennifer tried. She stumbled through explanations about being angry, about grieving, about not meaning what she wrote, about just venting to her advisor. But the damage was done. The jury could see the truth. This wasn't about a daughter who believed her father had been manipulated. This was about a woman who had decided she deserved half of an inheritance and was willing to destroy her sister to get it. Patricia introduced more documents, showing that Jennifer had contacted multiple lawyers about contesting the will before Dad had even died, that she had been planning this lawsuit for months, that every word of her testimony about being shocked and hurt by the will reading had been a complete lie. The judge called a recess, and I stumbled out of the courtroom barely able to see through my tears. Patricia found me in the bathroom and told me it was over, that Jennifer's case had just collapsed, that those documents proved premeditation and malicious intent, that the jury would see this for what it really was. I should have felt relief or vindication or triumph. Instead, I just felt hollow, empty, like something essential inside me had been ripped out and I was bleeding internally where no one could see. When we reconvened, Jennifer's lawyers asked for a sidebar with the judge. Then they requested a recess to discuss settlement options with their client. Jennifer wouldn't look at me. She sat at her table staring straight ahead, her perfect makeup starting to crack, and I could see her jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might shatter. Patricia leaned over and whispered, "They're going to drop the suit. You won." But I didn't feel like I had won anything. I had lost my sister. I had discovered that the person I had loved and admired my entire life had viewed me with contempt, had called me a loser and weak, had planned to destroy me before Dad was even cold in the ground. The inheritance didn't matter anymore. The house and the business and the money were just things, just stuff, meaningless compared to what I had really lost. Jennifer's lawyers came back and announced that their client was withdrawing the lawsuit. No settlement, no negotiation, just a complete withdrawal with prejudice, meaning she couldn't file again. The judge accepted the withdrawal and dismissed the case. It was over. 9 days of trial, 6 months of hell, all done. Patricia was shaking my hand and congratulating me and talking about filing for recovery of legal fees from Jennifer for bringing a frivolous lawsuit. But I was watching Jennifer gather her things and walk out of the courtroom without a backward glance, and all I could think was that I would give every penny of the inheritance back if I could have my sister back, if we could rewind time and be a family again. That was 3 months ago, and I haven't heard from Jennifer since. I tried calling her once, 2 weeks after the trial ended. She answered, and for a moment neither of us said anything. Then I said, "Jenny," using the nickname I had called her when we were kids, and she said in a voice like death, "Don't ever call me again," and hung up. I haven't tried again. What would be the point? I've been seeing a therapist to help process everything that happened. She keeps asking me about forgiveness, about whether I can forgive Jennifer for what she did. I don't know how to answer that. How do you forgive someone for showing you that everything you believed about your relationship was a lie? How do you forgive someone for calling you weak and a loser and a gold digger? How do you forgive someone for trying to destroy you over money, over things, over stuff that means nothing in the end? But here's the thing I've been thinking about a lot lately. Dad knew. He must have known what Jennifer was really like, must have seen something in her that I was too blind to see. That's why he wrote the will the way he did, why he left that letter trying to explain his decision, why he specifically asked his lawyer to make the will difficult to contest. He was trying to protect me from her, from the greed and entitlement that had been there all along hidden beneath the surface. I used to think Dad was being unfair to Jennifer, that he should have split everything equally regardless of our financial situations. Now I understand he was being wise, preparing for exactly what happened, trying to shield me from a battle he knew was coming. I sold the construction business to Dad's former partner. I kept the house because I couldn't bear to let it go, but I've been fixing it up, making it mine instead of just Dad's. I used some of the inheritance to pay off my and Marcus's student loans, to buy us a new car that doesn't break down every other month, to establish college funds for the kids we hope to have someday. The rest I invested, following Dad's example, trying to be a good steward of what he left me. I donated a significant amount to the Cancer Research Center where Dad received treatment, funding a study in his name. I set up a scholarship at my school for students who want to become teachers but can't afford college. I'm trying to use this money, this inheritance that cost me my sister, to do some good in the world, to honor Dad's memory in ways that would make him proud. Marcus and I finally got married last month, a small ceremony with close friends and the family we have left. It was beautiful and perfect and exactly what we wanted. But there was a hole where Jennifer should have been, where my maid of honor should have stood, where my sister should have been crying happy tears and embarrassing me with stories in her toast. I thought about sending her an invitation. I even addressed the envelope, but in the end, I couldn't do it. What would be the point of having her there if she despised me? If she still believed I had stolen what was rightfully hers? Sometimes I wonder what Jennifer is doing. Whether she's happy, whether she regrets what happened, whether she ever thinks about me or Dad or the family we used to be. I wonder if she lies awake at night thinking about those emails and text messages, about having her true feelings exposed in open court, about the look on my face when I heard her call me a loser. Does she feel shame? Regret? Or does she still believe she was right? That she was justified? That I was the villain in this story? I've learned so much from this experience, though I wouldn't wish these lessons on anyone. I learned that people aren't always who you think they are, that the masks we wear can hide terrible truths, that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we love most deeply. I learned that grief can make people do strange things, but so can greed, and sometimes it's impossible to tell which is which. I learned that family, the thing Dad valued above all else, is more fragile than we want to believe, that it can shatter like glass and cut you to pieces with the shards. But I also learned about resilience, about standing up for what's right even when it breaks your heart, about honoring the wishes of people we love even when it costs us dearly. I learned that inheritance isn't just about money and property, it's about values and character and the example set by those who came before us. Dad left me more than his estate. He left me his integrity, his work ethic, his kindness, his belief in doing the right thing even when it's hard. That's the real inheritance, the one Jennifer can never take from me no matter how many lawsuits she files. I still have Dad's letter, the one he wrote explaining his decision. I've read it hundreds of times, looking for answers, for understanding, for some kind of closure that always feels just out of reach. But there's one line I keep coming back to. Don't let my death be the thing that tears you apart. We failed him. Jennifer and I failed our father's last wish. We let his death tear us apart, let money and greed and hurt feelings destroy what we once had. I have to live with that failure, with knowing that I couldn't save our relationship, couldn't make Jennifer see that family matters more than inheritance, that love matters more than money. People ask me if I would do anything differently, if I could go back. Would I have offered Jennifer half of everything right after the will reading, prevented the lawsuit, saved our relationship? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. But I also think Jennifer would have taken half and still resented me, still believed she deserved more, still thought I had manipulated Dad. The lawsuit wasn't really about the money. It was about Jennifer's need to win, to be the favorite, to prove that she mattered more. And nothing I could have given her would have satisfied that need. So here I am, living in Dad's house, running my life with the security his inheritance provided, missing both my father and my sister with an ache that never quite goes away. I look at old photo albums sometimes, pictures of Jennifer and me as kids, matching outfits and gap-toothed grins, arms around each other, inseparable. I try to remember what it felt like to worship her, to trust her completely, to believe that nothing could ever come between us. That innocence feels like it belonged to a different person, a version of me that died in that courtroom when I heard what my sister really thought of me. But I'm building a new life, a good life, one that Dad would be proud of. Marcus and I are happy. My students still light up when they finally understand Shakespeare. I still make casseroles for friends who are going through hard times. I still believe in kindness and compassion and doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Jennifer's betrayal didn't destroy me, didn't make me bitter or cynical or cold. If anything, it made me appreciate the real relationships in my life, the people who show up, who tell the truth, who love you for who you are and not what you can give them. I hope someday Jennifer finds peace. I hope she looks back on what happened and feels something other than righteousness and entitlement. I hope she realizes what she lost, what she threw away, what she destroyed in her pursuit of money that she didn't even need. I hope she remembers the good times, the childhood we shared, the father who loved us both so much. And maybe, just maybe, I hope she picks up the phone one day and calls me, not to apologize or explain or justify, but just to talk, sister to sister, about anything and everything and nothing at all. But I'm not holding my breath. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. Some relationships, once betrayed, can't be mended. Some losses have to be mourned and accepted and carried with you like scars that never quite fade. My sister sued me for my inheritance, and the lawyer asked for one document that revealed everything. That document didn't just save my inheritance, it showed me the truth about someone I had loved my whole life. And now I have to figure out how to live with that truth, how to move forward, how to be okay with the fact that my sister is gone even though she's still alive somewhere in the world. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Have you ever had to choose between what's right and what's easy? Have you ever lost someone who's still breathing? I'd love to hear your stories, your experiences, your insights. Comment below and tell me about your own family struggles, your own battles with inheritance or betrayal or loss. Because here's what I've learned. We're all carrying these wounds, these secret pains, these broken relationships that we don't talk about. And maybe by sharing our stories, by being honest about how much it hurts, we can help each other heal, even just a little bit. If this story touched you, if it resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships and what really matters, please leave a like. It helps me know that sharing my pain wasn't pointless, that maybe my experience can help someone else avoid the same mistakes or feel less alone in their own struggles. And if you want to hear more stories like this, real stories about real people dealing with real pain and finding ways to survive and even thrive, please subscribe to my Truth Revealed Tales. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss future stories, because I promise you, this is just the beginning. We all have truths that need to be revealed, wounds that need to be acknowledged, stories that deserve to be told. Thank you for listening to mine. Thank you for being here. Thank you for understanding that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we love the most, and that's what makes it hurt so terribly, beautifully, devastatingly much.